The team of Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks, are one of the greatest tag teams in the modern era, and they have built an empire through pushing the boundaries of wrestling with their insane wrestling ability, chemistry in the ring, and masterful storytelling. They reached the top of the wrestling world by becoming merchandising juggernauts through their business acumen and clever marketing. The Young Bucks changed the landscape of wrestling through forming AEW. And if they had joined WWE in 2019, then this may have been a different story. Triple H endlessly courted the Young Bucks, but they ended up rejecting a $1 million a year offer from WWE. And this must have left Triple H like this.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
It's actually kind of ironic because just a couple years prior, the Young Bucks were parodying as Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Triple H had them right under his nose, but he still didn't sign them. WWE missed their shot because the Young Bucks have managed to become one of the biggest tag teams in wrestling that was never backed by the WWE machine. Despite all of this high praise though, the Young Bucks do have their fair share of detractors, as there are a lot of people who are not fans of the Young Bucks because they feel that the Young Bucks matches have too many flips and kicks, and their matches are just spot fests, and their characters are cringy. The most notable hater is Jim Cornette, and this must be Jim Cornette's reaction to watching any Young Bucks match. In this way, the Young Bucks are a very polarizing tag team, but what makes the Young Bucks such an interesting and relevant team is the fact that they know exactly what they're doing, and they encourage the hate towards them. They are master puppeteers in getting the wrestling world to feel a certain way about them. The Young Bucks constantly poke the bear, and when the bear gets up and attacks them, the Young Bucks defeat the bear with ease. Someone says they have too many super kicks in their matches? They add more super kicks. Someone says they're killing the business with their wrestling style? They literally write a book called Killing the Business. Someone says they're taking too many shots at WWE, they take more shots at WWE, and so forth and so forth. The Young Bucks basically know how to take something and run to the edge of the earth with it, and this always riles fans up, but their antics always give people something to talk about, and in this way they are always relevant and are always winning. The Young Bucks are basically massive trolls, and people fall for their bait every single time. Matt and Nick Jackson, however, were always lifelong wrestling fans, and their love for wrestling was apparent from a very early age, as they had a wrestling ring in their backyard throughout their adolescence, and the Young Bucks even started their own wrestling promotion called High Risk Wrestling. And in High Risk Wrestling, Matt and Nick taught themselves the fundamentals of wrestling, but the Young Bucks really honed their craft for wrestling on the independent circuit. And on the independent circuit, the Young Bucks cultivated their risky, flippy, and eccentric style of wrestling. The Young Bucks always wanted to be stars and sign official contracts, but they weren't willing to abandon their values to get to the top. And this was evident when the Young Bucks signed to TNA in 2009, and then asked for their release in 2011 because of monetary issues and booking issues. After they departed TNA, Matt Jackson actually wanted to retire, but then him and Nick ultimately decided to reinvent themselves, and thus the Badass Bucks were born, and started to make appearances in Japan's biggest promotion, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they joined the villainous Bullet Club faction. And through the Bullet Club, the Young Bucks made their name in wrestling. And in New Japan, they formed the Elite, which was a subgroup of the Bullet Club with Kenny by God Omega. They also created a YouTube show called Being the Elite that started off as a travel vlog but slowly transitioned into comedy skits. And Being the Elite grew to unimaginable proportions as it took on a life of its own, and it caused the Elite to become incredibly over among fans in the US who were clamoring for an alternative to WWE. And this led to All In, which was a show that was organized and promoted by the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes. And this show was a massive success, selling over 10,000 tickets, which is a huge feat for a non-WWE wrestling show on American soil. And this caused billionaire Tony Khan to approach Matt and Nick Jackson to create a new wrestling company to challenge WWE's monopoly in wrestling in the USA. And if you want to find out more, watch my video on how AEW destroyed WWE's monopoly in wrestling. And while you're at it, leave a like and subscribe. But anyway, Matt and Nick Jackson accepted Tony Khan's offer, and just like that, All Elite Wrestling AEW was born. And Matt and Nick's names were carved out in wrestling history. For a long time in the West, tag team team wrestling on a big scale was kind of an afterthought because WWE had underbooked their tag team division for years. But with AEW, the Young Bucks made sure to prioritize tag team wrestling, and they built a very strong tag team division and put a lot of emphasis on tag team wrestling. And this was at display at AEW's first ever show, Double or Nothing 2019, in which the Young Bucks faced off against the Lucha Brothers for the AAA Tag Team Championships. And this was two brothers against two brothers, and this match was amazing as the chemistry between the two teams really shone through and the Young Bucks picked up the win. This match showcased what makes tag team wrestling in AEW so unique, as the quicker style of match was a breath of fresh air to an American audience that had become accustomed to the formulaic WWE style. The Young Bucks and Lucha Bros managed to outdo themselves in their second match in AEW, in an Escalera de la Muerte match at AEW's All Out 2019, and every single spot in this match left everyone like this. Seriously though, this match was absolutely insane, and the whole match was basically just one long highlight reel. However, the worst bump by far in this match was this.
He's so close. Oh!
Yeah, that was genuinely scary to watch, and Nick Jackson even said it was one of the worst bumps that he's ever taken in his career. The Lucha Bros ended up picking up the win, and remember everything that I'm saying with the Lucha Brothers for later on in the video. But anyway, after this match, masked assailants attacked the Lucha Bros and Young Bucks, and it was revealed to be Santana and Ortiz. And from here on out, the Young Bucks started to feud with Santana and Ortiz. And on the debut episode of AEW's Dynamite, Santana and Ortiz were involved in a post-match beatdown of the Young Bucks, and they were revealed as members of Chris Jericho's faction, the Inner Circle. At this point, the Young Bucks were in a weird position because they were executive vice presidents of AEW, and this effectively meant that they had a lot of power in AEW and could potentially fall into the same pitfalls that WCW once did by booking themselves too strongly. But the Young Bucks made sure to book themselves in such a way where they uplift other talent, and this was even shown when they lost the first round tournament match to crown the inaugural AEW World Tag Team Champions against Private Party. So in the beginning, it wasn't all flowers and sunshine for the Young Bucks. So heading into Full Gear, the Young Bucks were not in the best form, as oftentimes Santana and Ortiz gave them the beats. And their feud with Santana and Ortiz culminated at AEW's Full Gear 2019. And this was an excellent match, but once again, the Young Bucks took the loss. The Young Bucks, however, beat Santana and Ortiz after Full Gear in a #1 contendership match and got a shot at SCU's AEW World Tag Team titles, but unfortunately, they lost their match against SCU. The Young Bucks losing so often at the beginning of AEW was actually a good thing, because if they had pushed themselves hard from the start, the fans would have most certainly turned on them. Right before AEW All Out 2019 though, Hangman Adam Page, who was part of the Elite, asked the Young Bucks to be by his side for his title match against Chris Jericho. Hangman asked to be accompanied by the Young Bucks because the Young Bucks usually accompany Kenny Omega to the ring for his big matches, and Hangman wanted the same treatment, but the Young Bucks said no. And Hangman wrestled Chris Jericho at AEW All Out with no one in his corner, and he lost this match, and this absolutely crushed Hangman. Hangman felt that he let everybody down, so he told the Young Bucks that he wants to leave the Elite because he wants to get his head right for a while. But the Young Bucks were reluctant to let him leave, so they basically refused to let him leave the Elite. And this left a sour taste in Hangman's mouth. Hangman went on to form a tag team with Kenny Omega, and they captured the tag team championships. But Hangman was still hurt by the betrayal of the Young Bucks, and because of this, he acted out towards the Young Bucks in many ways. And at this point, the Young Bucks were beyond repairing the broken friendship that they had with Hangman. So they fed into the toxic back and forth with Hangman, and they berated Hangman for his drinking and told him that he's letting everybody down. Kenny Omega is just a bystander in all of this beef, and he's close with Hangman and the Young Bucks, so he's kind of just caught in the middle. The Young Bucks were also kind of jealous of Hangman because at the end of the day, they were the EVPs of the company, and Hangman was not, but he was holding the tag team championships. And the Young Bucks felt that they should have been the ones to hold the tag team championships. And all of this intense beef culminated at AEW's Revolution 2020 for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. And going into this match, the resentment and animosity was real between the Young Bucks and Hangman Adam Page. And this match between the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page is one of the greatest matches in tag team history, if not the greatest match in tag team history. And it was rated 6 stars by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, which means it broke the rating scale and is the highest rated tag team match of all time. This match was universally appraised because it was a perfect example of how great tag team wrestling could be. And this match had brilliant wrestling interweaved with masterful storytelling. Unfortunately, the Young Bucks took the loss in this match, but it didn't really matter because tag team wrestling as a whole took a massive W that night. And going into this match, everyone expected Hangman Page to turn heel. But after the match, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega stood across Hangman, and for a second it looked like they were the ones who were going to turn heel by hitting a triple super kick on Hangman, like they have done on other opponents in the past. But instead, the Young Bucks just left the ring. And remember everything that I'm saying that relates to Hangman and the Young Bucks for later on in the video. But anyway, after this match, the Young Bucks and Hangman continued to fall out. The Young Bucks and the Elite then entered into a feud with the Inner Circle, and the Inner Circle even decimated Nick Jackson one week, leaving him a bloody mess and kayfabe leaving him on the shelf for weeks. And this feud between the Inner Circle and the Elite was supposed to culminate in AEW's first ever Blood and Guts match, which was a War Game style match in a double-sided cage. But then the pandemic hit, and all plans for the Blood and Guts match were scrapped. And this really sucked because everybody was looking forward to the Blood and Guts match because it was hyped so much. And this caused all momentum of the storyline to dwindle, and the Young Bucks didn't wrestle on Dynamite for months, as well as Hangman. But the Young Bucks returned in a spectacular fashion when the Inner Circle were beating down Kenny Omega on the TIAA bank field, and Matt and Nick Jackson dived onto Santana and Ortiz from the stands. But this dive didn't go as planned because Matt Jackson actually broke his rib by doing this. But despite the injuries suffered, there was still some residual animosity that was between the Young Bucks and Hangman, who had also returned during this segment. But the show had to go on, and the Inner Circle and the Elite's feud culminated at AEW's Double or Nothing 2020 in a Stadium Stampede match, which took place in a stadium. And this match was outside the box, and it was freaking awesome, and it blew expectations out of the water, and Matt Jackson even moonsaulted off the goalpost with a broken freaking rib. The Elite won the match, and all was right within the Elite for that moment. But then enter FTR, formerly known as their revival in WWE, who had just gotten released, and thank God they left WWE. FTR vs the Young Bucks was a match that was teased for years, as when FTR was in WWE, they sent out this tweet, and it was echoed by the Young Bucks. And just with the power of this tweet, a dream match was set. But when FTR arrived in AEW, they didn't attack the Young Bucks. They actually helped the Young Bucks out, and FTR played buddy-buddy with Hangman Adam Page for a little while. But they were plotting something much more sinister, as they only wanted the tag team gold, and they were willing to do anything for it. So they got very close to Hangman Adam Page and convinced Hangman Adam Page to interfere in a Young Bucks #1 contendership match, because they knew how vulnerable and desperate for friendship Hangman was. Hangman Adam Page followed through with these orders by holding Nick Jackson's leg right before the Young Bucks were just about to win a match to become the #1 contenders, and this caused the Young Bucks to lose the #1 contendership match, and the Young Bucks were very angry about it. So after this match, they confronted Hangman Adam Page at the bar, and they said that he's changed, and they called him nothing but a drunk, and threw his drink in his face and kicked him out of the Elite for good. Hangman's betrayal really hurt the Young Bucks, and from that point on, the Young Bucks decided that they have been too nice in AEW and it was getting them nowhere, and it was time to resurrect their old bastard selves. And this caused them to lash out a bit, and they were acting more and more heelish by super kicking a lot of the AEW interviewers and refs, and just acting like general douchebags. But bear in mind, they were not fully healed during this time. They were like half heel and half face. And FTR's plan managed to work because at that point they were the AEW World Tag Team Champions. The Young Bucks then won a #1 contendership match, and just like that, the dream match that had been brewing for years between the Young Bucks and FTR was set for AEW's Full Gear 2020 for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. And the story going into this match was a sort of clashing of styles, as the Young Bucks represented the new school of wrestling and FTR represented the old school of wrestling, and FTR hated the new school of wrestling that was too overly concerned with flips. The Young Bucks also said that if they lost this match, then they would never ever challenge for the AEW World Tag Team Championships again. And there was a lot of pressure on FTR and the Young Bucks to deliver in this match, but boy did they knock it out of the park with this match.
One pitch to Gibson. There's a belt to left. That's gone. Let's watch it. Where is it? Is it out of the park? Yes.
This match was one of the greatest tag team matches of all time, and it told an effective story of old school versus new school. The finish of this match was especially apropos as FTR succumbed to the new school way of doing things when Cash Wheeler did a springboard 450 splash and missed, causing the Young Bucks to win the match and become the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. However, as the Young Bucks were celebrating in the middle of the ring with Kenny Omega, Hangman Adam Page was just standing there in the tunnel, almost like he wanted to go out and celebrate with them, but he didn't. And this was also reflected after the match when Hangman was standing outside the Young Bucks dressing room when the Young Bucks were celebrating. And after this, their fellow Elite member Kenny Omega got associated with his family friend Don Callis, and he turned heel and he won the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. And Kenny Omega was up to his bastard heel antics with Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows as he assaulted Jon Moxley after a match. And the Young Bucks came out for the save for Jon Moxley, and they tried to speak some sense into Kenny Omega, but Kenny Omega said to them that there's no use in them fighting with each other. And then he put up the Too Sweet hand signal, and the Young Bucks reluctantly put up the Too Sweet sign, which is a throwback to their days in the Bullet Club, and thus the Super Elite was born. But the Super Elite wasn't all good at first because some beef was brewing between the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega's manager and family friend Don Callis. Don Callis even offered the Young Bucks money while making snide remarks at them, but the Young Bucks refused to be bought by Don Callis. And after weeks and weeks of indirect insults from Don Callis, the Young Bucks were separating themselves more and more from Kenny Omega. And 1 week after a post-match beatdown from Kenny Omega to the Lucha Bros and Laredo Kid, Kenny Omega confronted the Young Bucks because he sensed that they weren't fully committing to being bad guys. And he gave the Young Bucks a choice to join him, Carl Anderson, and Doc Gallows officially. But the Young Bucks declined and they walked out of the ring, and in a turn of events, the Young Bucks chose to instead align with Kenny Omega's arch nemesis and biggest rival, Jon Moxley. And in a 6-man tag between Jon Moxley and the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega and Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows, the Young Bucks officially turned heel by super kicking Jon Moxley and officially joining the dark side. And thus the fully heel Young Bucks were born. And the heel Young Bucks are honestly the best version of the Young Bucks, as they started to truly let go and just be their silly selves. The heel Young Bucks carried themselves with unfiltered cockiness, smarky arrogance, and unparalleled swagger. From them wearing sneakers that were thousands of dollars every week, to them growing their beards out in ridiculous styles and even dyeing their beards different colors, to Nick Jackson wearing interesting piercings, to them wearing ludicrous outfits and flashy and flamboyant ring gear. The Young Bucks were even stealing Seth Rollins' drip, because whenever Seth Rollins had some drip in WWE, the Young Bucks would copy that look. But could you blame them though? Look at all that drip. And the Young Bucks were just more goofy in general. And the best thing ever is when Nick Jackson does this.
I'm sorry, guys. AEW.com. I know.
And the heel Young Bucks trolled even more than they already do, as they started a thing on Twitter where they tweeted out new bio, causing people to click on their bio to see the message that they wrote in their Twitter bio. And what was in their bio was always a troll job, or them teasing something, or them reminding everyone how they are the saviors of professional wrestling. And this always worked the fans. One thing's for certain, the Young Bucks know how to work. The Young Bucks' heel antics really amplified their tag team title reign, as they defended the World Tag Team Championships against a myriad of opponents, most notably Chris Jericho and MJF at AEW's Revolution 2021, and Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley at AEW's Double or Nothing 2021. You can find out more about these matches in my MJF Story So Far video and my Jon Moxley Story So Far video, but these matches were amazing, and the Young Bucks won both of these matches. And after this, there was a tag team tournament to determine who would face the Young Bucks in a steel cage at AEW's All Out 2021. And the Lucha Bros won the tag team tournament and earned themselves a shot at the tag team championships. And there was a lot of history going into this match because the Lucha Bros were the greatest rivals of the Young Bucks in AEW. And everybody knew that they were going to get a good match out of these two pairs of brothers, but they didn't know it was going to be that damn amazing. This match was an absolute spectacle and was most certainly the best tag team match of 2021. This match was mind-boggling, bloody, and brutal, as Rey Fenix even jumped off the top of the cage, and the Young Bucks even whipped out a shoe that was covered in thumbtacks and kicked the Lucha Bros with it. And Matt Jackson loved those thumbtacks. Find someone who looks at you the way Matt Jackson looks at those thumbtack shoes. But the Young Bucks ended up taking the loss in this match, ending their title reign at 302 days. But because of the quality of matches that they put on during their tag team title reign, their reign was iconic. And at the very end of AEW's All Out 2021, Adam Cole debuted in AEW and he joined the Super Elite. And the Young Bucks and Adam Cole have a lot of history going back, as they were also in a subgroup of the Bullet Club called the Super Clique, and it was just very fitting to see Adam Cole back with the Young Bucks. But even before they lost the tag team titles, the Young Bucks cost Hangman Adam Page a shot at the AEW World title by holding his leg in the same manner that Hangman held Nick Jackson's leg to cost them a shot at the AEW World Tag Team titles. And this caused Hangman to disappear for a while. But when Hangman returned, the Young Bucks continued to back Kenny Omega up in his feud with Hangman Adam Page. And just before AEW Full Gear 2021, Hangman Adam Page asked the Young Bucks to stay as far away as possible in his AEW World title match with Kenny Omega. One interesting parallel to note here is that once upon a time, Hangman invited the Young Bucks to be at ringside for his World title match against Chris Jericho at All Out 2019, but now he's asking them to stay as far away as possible in his World title match. And another great parallel to note here is that Hangman is wearing the same shirt that he was wearing when he cost the Young Bucks a tag team title opportunity, and when the Young Bucks kicked him out of the Elite. When the Young Bucks kicked Hangman out of the Elite, they said that he's changed, but looking at these pictures side by side, you can clearly see who's changed. Just like Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks changed and they turned heel so that they could win championships and keep those championships. But Hangman has stayed his same old cowboy self. And at AEW's Full Gear 2021, after the Young Bucks and Adam Cole had a barn burner of a match with Christian Cage, Jungle Boy, and Luchasaurus, they walked down to the ring in the main event for the AEW World Championship between Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. And just as Hangman is about to give Kenny Omega a buckshot lariat, Nick Jackson, with anguish in his eyes, has the opportunity to grab Hangman's leg and cost him the world title. Just like how Hangman grabbed Nick's leg and cost the Young Bucks a shot at the AEW World Tag Team Championships. And Nick Jackson just stands there, seemingly frozen in time. And this gives Hangman the opportunity to give a buckshot lariat to Kenny Omega's back. And then Hangman goes to the other side of the ring to set up a second buckshot lariat. And Matt Jackson follows him to the other side of the ring and looks Hangman dead in the eye and gives him a slight nod of approval. Almost as if to say, "Go on, Hangman. I know we've done a lot to hurt each other, but you deserve this." You must remember that the Young Bucks do not hate Hangman. The animosity between the Young Bucks and Hangman was just a product of Hangman wanting to leave the Elite and the Young Bucks reluctant to let him leave. In other words, it was just a product of friends having a disagreement, of which the disagreement blew to proportions outside of their control. The Young Bucks still care about Hangman, and this was reflected in Being the Elite when Matt Jackson was outside of the Dark Order's lair watching Hangman have fun with the Dark Order. Almost like he wanted to go in, but he was holding himself. And this is a great parallel to when Hangman was outside of the Elite's room wanting to go in but held himself. It's also interesting to note here that the Young Bucks turned heel a few days after this happened, so it's quite evident that this had an impact on Matt and Nick Jackson, because at the end of the day, they care about Hangman. So the Young Bucks allowed Hangman to finish Kenny Omega off and become the new AEW World Champion, and this was a very babyface move of the Young Bucks, and it was a perfect way to end their story with Hangman. Currently, the Young Bucks are embroiled in a sort of tussle with Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish over Adam Cole, and it's very exciting to see where this story goes, but that's the story so far of the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks have elevated tag team wrestling as a whole and have changed the landscape of tag team wrestling for the better, and they will go down as one of the best and most influential tag teams of all times. Love them or hate them, the Young Bucks are good at what they do and have carved out a place in the history books. You may not like them, but you have to respect them for all that they've done and will continue to do for wrestling in general. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. But anyway, goodbye, you jobbers.